Why people who stay alive after 60 all share this secret. Here is something worth sitting with. Two people, same age. Both retired. Both living on the same quiet street. Both carrying the same aches, the same gray, the same slow mornings. And yet one of them is still burning. You can feel it when you're near them. There's a warmth, a readiness, something behind the eyes that hasn't gone to sleep. And the other person? They're still here. But something essential, something you can't quite name, packed up and left without saying goodbye. What happened? Because it wasn't age. Age didn't do that. Something else did. There's a way of understanding the human being that most of modern life ignores completely. Not as a body running on calories and habits. Not as a mind collecting information. But as a soul. A soul that arrived in this world carrying something, a purpose it has not yet fully unpacked. And the tragedy isn't death. The tragedy is reaching the end of a life and realizing that purpose was never touched. That the deepest room in the house was never opened. Most people spend 40 years building a career. Almost no one spends 40 minutes asking what they were actually built for. So the alarm stops. The meetings end. The children leave. The house quiets. And suddenly there is space, more space than most people have ever known. And here is the question that space puts to every one of us. Will you finally go inward, or will you spend the rest of your days trying to fill the silence with noise? Today we're going to talk about 7 habits that seem to keep people genuinely alive well past 60. Not alive in the biological sense. Alive in the way that matters. Alive in the soul. Some of these will feel familiar. One of them is so quiet, so unhurried, that most people walk right past it. And if you stay until the end, I think it might be the one that changes something in you. Let's begin with a habit that has nothing to do with fitness, productivity, or reinventing yourself. The first is learning something you don't already know. There was a man who spent 35 years in the same job, the same office, the same commute. He was good at it. He was respected. And the day he retired, he realized he had spent his entire adult life becoming excellent at something that no longer existed in his daily world. He was suddenly a master of nothing he needed. The first months were confusing. Not painful, just strange. Like living in a house where all the furniture has been moved 2 inches. Nothing is exactly where your hands reach for it. His granddaughter talked him into a beginner's drawing class. He resisted. He said he had no talent, no eye, no patience. All of which were probably true. His first drawings looked like the world had been designed by someone who'd heard of objects but never seen one. But something unexpected happened in that room. He became a beginner again. And there is something almost sacred about being a beginner. Think about it. A child has no past to protect. No reputation to defend. A child leans into the unknown because the unknown is everywhere and curiosity is the only reasonable response to it. The moment a person loses that curiosity, life begins to look the same every single day. Not because life changed. Because they stopped looking. Suffering, real suffering, often comes not from pain but from meaninglessness. From the feeling that there is nothing left to discover. That the story is essentially over even if the body keeps moving. Learning interrupts that. It says, there is still more. There is still something ahead of you that you have not touched yet. It doesn't need to be dramatic. Photography. A language. Cooking something you've never cooked. Understanding the night sky. The subject almost doesn't matter. What matters is that you are placing yourself in front of the unknown and saying, I'm still open. I'm still here. I haven't finished. What's one thing you've always wanted to understand but never started? Drop it in the comments. You might light something up for someone else. The second habit is walking with your eyes open. Not fitness walking. Not step counting. Not getting the heart rate up. Walking as a practice of attention. There's a difference between moving through a place and actually being in it. Most of us have spent decades moving through our lives at tremendous speed. Rushing. Arriving. Departing. Never quite landing anywhere long enough to feel the ground beneath us. A woman started doing something small after her retirement. Every morning she walked the same route through her neighborhood. But she gave herself one simple instruction: find something you've never noticed before. One morning it was the way light hit a particular wall at 7:15 and turned it the color of warm bread. Another morning it was an old man she'd passed for years, and for the first time she stopped and asked him his name. His name was Arthur. He had been a carpenter for 50 years. He had stories like furniture, solid and finely made. She said that those walks didn't change the neighborhood. They changed her. Because she started paying attention. And paying attention, real attention, is one of the most spiritual acts a person can perform. It is the opposite of sleepwalking through your own life. There is a deep truth in many philosophical traditions that the outer world is a kind of mirror. What you are capable of seeing out there is directly connected to how awake you are in here. Most of what we call boredom is not a shortage of interesting things. It is a shortage of presence. Walking slows the body down long enough for the soul to catch up. And sometimes, in the quiet of a morning walk, something in you settles. The noise inside grows soft. Not because the problems disappeared, but because you remembered, for a few minutes, what it feels like to be a human being standing on the earth, breathing, here, alive. The third habit is having conversations that actually mean something. This one almost never appears on wellness lists. Nobody sells equipment for it. Nobody measures it on a smartwatch. And yet it may do more for a person's spirit than almost anything else. Real conversation. The kind where you say something true and the other person says something true back and you both feel slightly different by the end of it. A lot of people retire and slowly, without quite realizing it, begin to drift from connection. Not through rejection. Just through the natural erosion of shared schedules. The colleagues are gone. The children are busy. The neighbors don't know you yet. Entire days pass and nothing honest is said to anyone. And there is a specific kind of loneliness that comes not from being alone, but from being surrounded by people and still unseen. Still unheard. Still carrying whatever you're carrying with nowhere to put it down. A retired teacher joined a small community discussion group. Just ordinary people. Talking about their lives, their questions, the things they'd learned and the things that had broken them and rebuilt them differently. She wasn't looking for answers. She was looking for the feeling that her inner life was real. That someone else had wrestled with the same things. Within a few months, people said she seemed different. Lighter. More present. More herself. There's a reason for this. We are not just thinking beings. We are beings who need to be witnessed. Who need to tell the story of our lives to someone who will receive it honestly. That is not weakness. That is something deeply, fundamentally human. So call the person you've been meaning to call. Ask the question you've been carrying. Let the conversation go somewhere real. Your life becomes more real when it is shared. The fourth habit is giving something of yourself to someone else. This one surprises people the most. Because the natural assumption about retirement is that it is finally time to stop giving and start receiving. And rest is real. Rest is earned. Rest matters. But something quietly devastating can happen when a person's entire world becomes their own comfort. Life begins to contract. Problems grow larger because there is nothing larger than them to look at. Time moves slowly because it is filled only with personal maintenance. A retired man started volunteering at a community center. Just once a week. He wasn't saving lives. He was just showing up. Answering questions. Teaching people skills he'd spent a lifetime accumulating without realizing they were a gift. One afternoon, a young person told him something that shook him. They said, "You remind me of the grandfather I lost." He didn't say anything. But something rearranged itself inside him. Because he realized that his experience, all of it, the hard years, the mistakes, the lessons he'd had to learn twice, none of it was wasted. It was a lantern. And lanterns are not made to sit in a cupboard. The soul does not flourish in self-containment. This is not a moral argument. It is almost a law of human nature. We are most alive when we are contributing to something beyond ourselves. When we feel that our being here has made some small corner of the world a little warmer, a little less lost. You don't need a program or a title. Maybe it's checking on someone who lives alone. Maybe it's offering what you know to someone who needs it. Maybe it's simply being the person who listens without rushing to the next thing. Purpose is not something you find by searching inward exclusively. Sometimes it finds you the moment you turn toward someone else. The fifth habit is making something with your hands. There is something that happens when a person makes something that doesn't happen any other way. The modern world has made us almost entirely consumers of other people's creativity. We watch, we scroll, we receive. And there is nothing wrong with that. But it leaves something in us hungry. Something that needs not just to receive beauty but to participate in it. A man who spent decades in a high-pressure corporate role started, somewhat accidentally, building small wooden boxes for his grandchildren. Nothing elaborate. Just simple, careful, handmade things. He said that the first time he finished one and held it in his hands, he felt something he couldn't quite name. A satisfaction that was different from anything achievement had ever given him. Because achievement is always about comparison. About being better than, faster than, more successful than. But creation is just you and the thing you're making and whether it becomes what it was trying to be. The garden you tend. The bread you bake. The painting that nobody will ever hang in a gallery. The quilt that takes 6 months and becomes a world. Every one of these is a small act of participation in the ongoing work of making. And there is something in that act, something that connects you to the oldest parts of being human. To the truth that you are not just here to endure. You are here to bring things into existence that weren't here before. And there is a joy in that, quiet and solid, that almost nothing else can replicate. The sixth habit is play. Purposeless, joyful, slightly ridiculous play. Somewhere in adulthood, most people make a quiet decision. They decide that seriousness is the appropriate permanent state of a grown human being. That laughter must be earned. That fun must be justified. That anything not productive is somehow suspicious. And slowly, over years, the part of them that knows how to be delighted goes into a kind of hibernation. Watch an old person genuinely playing with young children. Chasing them around the yard. Making absurd sounds. Losing badly at board games on purpose and pretending they're furious. In those moments they look ageless. Not because they've forgotten they're 70. Because they've remembered something that 70 years of serious living nearly buried. Joy is not the reward at the end of a worthy life. Joy is fuel. It is something the soul needs regularly the way the body needs water. Dancing in the kitchen when nobody is watching. Singing badly and enthusiastically on long drives. Playing cards with people who make you laugh until you forget what hand you're holding. These are not trivial things. They are a return to something essential. A reminder that existence itself, before all the weight we pile onto it, was always meant to have lightness in it. Suffering teaches depth. But play teaches something just as important. It teaches you that you are still here. That life still has electricity in it. That the world is still, in its bones, astonishing. The seventh habit is the one that holds all the others together. And it is the most interior. It is the exploration of your own soul. Most of us spend our lives learning about the world outside ourselves. We accumulate knowledge, opinions, facts, memories. We become experts in how things work out there. Very few of us ever turn around and ask, what is actually happening in here? What am I carrying? What have I never put down? What do I actually believe, not what I was told to believe, not what is convenient to believe, but what, in the deepest and most honest part of me, do I know to be true? The second half of life offers something the first half almost never can. It offers the freedom to finally stop performing and start discovering. A woman began keeping a journal in her mid-60s. Not to record events. To follow thoughts all the way to their roots. To say things on paper that she had never said out loud. To ask questions she had spent decades not asking because there was never time, because the answer might be inconvenient, because it was easier to stay busy. She wrote about the things she'd wanted and never pursued. The grief she'd carried quietly for 20 years. The beliefs that had held her and the beliefs she'd outgrown. The question she'd never been brave enough to sit with, what was all of this for? And slowly, through that writing, something began to clarify. Not answers exactly. More like orientation. Like finding which way is north. Because here is what matters most. At the center of a human life is not a resume or a body or even a collection of relationships. At the center is something that arrived before any of that and will remain after all of it. Something that has been watching your whole life from a place of deep quiet. Waiting for you to be still enough to hear it. That something is who you actually are. And perhaps the greatest adventure available to any person after 60 is not what's left to accomplish. It's what's left to become. What's left to understand. What you can finally, in the freedom of this chapter, allow yourself to be. So here they are. 7 paths. Learning something new. Walking with attention. Conversations that are real. Giving to someone else. Making something with your hands. Playing again. And going inward, all the way inward, to the place where you are most yourself. None of these require perfect health. None require money. None require youth. In fact, they deepen with age. Because aging, real aging, the kind that moves inward as well as outward, is not a loss. It is a clarification. It is the slow removal of everything that was never really you. Some people glow as they grow older. You've seen them. You know them. And it's not because life was kinder to them. It's because they kept their relationship with life honest. They kept growing. They kept contributing. They kept asking. They kept, in the truest sense of the word, showing up. The calendar moved. But the soul stayed curious. If you're past 60, hear this, you are not running out of life. You are living the chapter that everything before it was preparing you for. The one with the most light in it, if you're willing to go toward it. And if you're younger, perhaps this is simply an early reminder. That staying young is not about fighting age. It's about staying awake. Staying honest. Staying open. It is about choosing, again and again, to be fully present inside the only life you were ever given. Before you go, I want to ask you something real. Of these 7, which one have you already found? And which one is waiting for you? Tell me in the comments. Because your answer might be the exact thing someone else needs to read today.